Hello and welcome to this round 8 here at Grand Prix Copenhagen. We have another Death Shadow pseudo-mirror. Jasper Grimmer is on Abzan Death Shadow. Marcio Carvalho, the #1 ranked player in the world, he's on Jun Death Shadow. And we saw earlier on from watching Marcio play that he definitely has a plan for how these sorts of mirrors are going to go. Let's see how much he has to adapt that playing against an Abzan build, which I presume is leaning a little bit heavier on the likes of Lingering Souls.
Yeah, and that's a white-bordered martial arts from Jasper Grimmer.
Jasper Grimmer,
altered.
He marches to the beat of his own drum. He really likes the look of white-bordered cards, and it's not going to be unusual to see cards that have never existed in a white border that he's painstakingly just adapted so that they do have white borders. So warnings in advance for those of you in the chat that find these funny to look at. There's going to be a few more of them. I believe that Jasper Grimmer is the only person I know who has played games with white-bordered Force of Wills. So here comes Inquisition of Kozilek, having a look at Marcio Carvalho's hand, sees a Terminate, Teemo Battle Rage, Inquisition of Kozilek, 2 copies of Thoughtseize alongside 2 copies of Verdant Catacombs. Any particular standouts for you then, Moraine, in terms of what to take?
Like, he's got a high amount of discard spells, so you will have to have a very good reason to pick one of these. So probably the best choice is Terminate. I wouldn't be too afraid of Teemo Battle Rage for this hand. So I think Terminate is probably the most logical choice, but he might up taking a discard spell anyway, just to get rid of it.
I mean, Terminate is going to be something to worry about at some point later on anyway. Looks like that is the option that he goes with. Marcio Carvalho, the way that his cards are altered is that signed by the artist Alexis Briclot, those Thoughtseizes, and as it happens, they're all in Japanese as well. Some players specifically hunting down the Japanese cards just because they like the look of the language on it. Street Wraith the pickup there for Carvalho, so if he wants to go low on life early, he can do, and it looks like he does want to find a little bit of gas there. Draws a Death Shadow.
Not too bad. I wonder if Marcio Carvalho will once again play this matchup as slowly as he did when we saw him do it 2 rounds ago in the mirror. But I think game 1 he doesn't have that much redundancy with Lingering Souls, so he should probably go a bit quicker, not protecting his life that much.
And I think that the decision on that changes a bit once he, before even having to think about cracking his first fetch land, has seen a Death Shadow. If he didn't have a Death Shadow to work toward immediately, he may have been a little bit more tempted to play things kind of slowly. But here, already on the first turn, he's used a Street Wraith, he's used a fetch land, he's used a shock land, he's used a Thoughtseize immediately on 13 life before Jasper Grimmer even gets to take a second turn. And he sees Death Shadow, Inquisition of Kozilek, Street Wraith, Fatal Push, and a land in Jasper Grimmer's hand. What do we take here?
I think that the Death Shadow has to be the pick. Given how Marcio still has 2 more discard spells, so he can get rid of the Fatal Push later, but he does not have a removal spell for the Death Shadow, so I think he should be taking that one. Also, Jasper can go down to 15 with the Street Raid, 13 with a fetch, with a land, so 1 more spell that deals him damage, and he can already play the Death Shadow.
And you can see there Marcio working through that same math in his head there and with his hands. Such an expressive player. Those eyebrows always moving as he's thinking away. Marcio, ranked #1 in the world, based off some super finishes in the last year, including making the finals of Pro Tour Ether Revolt. He also had a finals finish at the World Championship, which of course was won by Brian Brown-Duin. Has yet to pick up a Pro Tour level trophy, but based on his performances lately, you have to say that he's always a player that you're watching out for.
Oh, he's getting rid of Inquisition of Kozilek. Not too afraid of the Death Shadow. Protecting his hand. Maybe he's just trying to protect the Death Shadow Teemo Battle Rage combo in his hand.
And Teemo Battle Rage plus a Death Shadow is a way of closing out games very quickly indeed. And Jasper Grimmer certainly has the potential to lower his life total a great deal. White-bordered Tarmogoyf coming down.
Second Battle Rage. So maybe now he fires off a second Thoughtseize, yeah, gets rid of the Fatal Push, and then plays his Dead Shadow. And both the other card, yeah, actually very well played once again. I mean, maybe I should not be commentating on Marcio Carvalho. His Thoughtseize. This is wonderfully played. Now he has the Dead Shadow, and next turn Teemo Battle Rage ready.
Now, Jasper Grimmer does know about Teemo Battle Rage from his early discard. How much is that going to impact on the way that this game plays out?
Yeah, well, it's hard to play around. You need to go low enough so that your own Dead Shadow is big. But if you go low, then your opponent will just give it double strike and kill you. So it's very hard to play around. He might like fake a removal spell or try to bluff it when he doesn't have it, but apart from that, it's very hard to play around. You could say he's gonna like chum block, but yeah, chum blocking is not achieving much either.
Well, you called it, the Battle Rage ready at hand. Currently that Death Shadow is a 5/5. It's not going to take too much for it to grow quite a bit larger. And Jasper Grimmer right now, he's showed off that he's got Abzan. It's not necessarily going to be obvious to Marcio Carvalho at this point that Godless Shrine isn't simply for a splashed Lingering Souls in the sideboard. I don't know that he necessarily could be confident that this is not just an unusual land to see early from an otherwise Jund deck. Traverse the Elven Wild here with Delirium.
He's actually gonna search up a Mars Flat, then sacrifice it to take some more damage so he can start playing his own Dead Shadow.
It's a play that we've seen a couple of times. Ranger of Eos looks to be a main deck inclusion for Jasper Grimmer, and actually I believe also a main deck inclusion for Marcio. It's one of those cards that if you're looking for the mirror match does give you a way of just edging ahead. So one of the traverses found land, the other one found Ranger of Eos, and then Jasper casting his Death Shadow.
Yeah, and the fetch land, probably the perfect draw here for Marcio. Lets him take 3, goes down to 5, so it's 8, 8, 16. Means that Jasper has to put in front at least 6 toughness.
Now there's a slightly strange interaction when it comes to Trample and Death Shadow.
Yeah.
That's something that it was a surprise to me when it first happened on Magic Online, and will be a consideration here if it works out that Jasper Grimmer can find a way of surviving, because if you trample over a Death Shadow, because then after you've taken damage, but before state-based effects like damage would kill the Death Shadow, it ends up with more toughness because now you have a lower life total. It's a very strange state of affairs.
Yeah, and Jasper Grimmer's Dead Shadow is 3/3. Let's see. Dead Shadow from Marcio, 5/5. No, 6/6 goes to 9/9 if I'm correct. 5. No, 8/8. So first strike damage 8. He needs to deal 6 to the Dead Shadow. Yeah, he's not lethal. I think if Jasper only blocks with Dead Shadow, he's not dead. But it's not easy to do without writing it down.
Yeah, this is an advanced maths problem when it comes to how Death Shadow math works. And Death Shadow math is already more complicated than a lot of combat math.
Because if you deal 2 trample damage, then the Dead Shadow grows by 2, So it becomes a 5/5. So you need to deal 5 to it. So yeah, that's how it goes. If you from the moment you deal 3 trample damage, it becomes a 6/6, and you do not kill it with the first strike. Blocking with the Tarmogoyf also an option, but I'm not sure how much I like double blocking. I don't like double blocking. He just puts the Death Shadow first. Now he's gonna sacrifice. Goes down to 5. Make it an 8/8. Give it double strike. Kill the Death Shadow in the first go, and then in the second go, Tarmogoyf is not big enough to kill the Death Shadow. So I don't think double blocking accomplishes anything.
And of course, as far as Jasper Grimm is concerned, there's only one Teemo Battle Rage to think about.
Yeah.
So as far as Jasper's concerned, this might be, fair play. He just gets to make sure that he's not dying to Teemo Battle Rage, safe in the knowledge that the other one's lurking somewhere in Marcio's deck.
And now we can actually deal 3 and the rest to Tarmogoyf, and then the next turn, the normal damage, he can still kill the Tarmogoyf and trample over for some more. So 8, 16, 3, 13. I believe it's still 8 damage or something. Jasper should go down to something like 2, 3. 2. Does he have a basic forest? I don't think he has.
Often these decks will have a basic somewhere in there.
The basic swamp is usual. Oh yeah, he does have.
An unglued basic forest, I like that. But Marcio says, look, I have got this other Teemo Battle Rage, and Jasper's not going to waste time. Marcio's already picked up 1 draw in this tournament, and believe it or not, it was in Death Shadow Mirror. He's not going to want another one, so he's going to be playing fast for the rest of this round. We're going to get a chance to see the rest of his match, and indeed plenty more from the feature match area. But first, these messages. Hello and welcome back to this round 8 here at Grand Prix Copenhagen. These guys still finishing their sideboarding after Marcio Carvalho picked up the first game there. So we're going to get a chance to look across at one of the other decks that's in our feature match area. George Burrow, he is playing a blue-white-ish control deck. Meanwhile, Elias Watsfeld, we saw him earlier on Humans. He's still doing exactly that. He won game 1, and in game 2, it looks like he's off to a fair old start here. Thalia, Heretic Cathar at the bottom there, making everything a bit slower for the control deck. Meanwhile, you've got Meddling Mage and Champion of the Parish also going to town here on George Burrow. What can George put together here? Blue-white, not a deck that I've seen in the feature match area thus far too much. It's another nuanced choice. We saw Mark Tobias on Esper, and there's a lot of different things that a control deck needs to prepare for in this modern format. You need to be able to deal with straightforward beatdown draws. You need to be able to deal with all sorts of different combos. And at some point, you need to find a way of closing out the game yourself. That a not trivial combination of things to get going.
No, there's just so many different decks, and they attack you all at different angles. So it's indeed very hard. Like some people claim that Condemn was the key to it, because it's working wonders against Death Shadow, especially against more than one of them. But yeah, that's only against the one specific deck. It's hard to just beat all of the decks. It's hard for any deck to beat all of the decks, but when you have a proactive plan, you can count on your proactive plan to just get you there. But when you're trying to be reactive, it needs to be good enough to react to everything that's possible, and that's very hard in a format like this.
Yeah, every deck that has kind of a big combo finish has at least the potential for what we call free wins.
Yep.
Where your opponent maybe stumbles on mana or stumbles on their draw in some way or fashion. You happen to draw your combo early and often and just get it done. As things stand, that not so much of an option for these slightly slower paced control decks. And right now, Elias Watsfeld, he's got George Burrow down to 4. He's a game up. He's forcing a supreme verdict here just so that George Burrow can stay in the game. Collector Company off the top is exactly what George Burrow did not want to see. That one of the most effective ways that Elias Watsfeld has to rebuild here. Let's see what he can find. Well, it's about the most anemic Collector Company possible that hasn't completely missed. Avacyn's Pilgrim, when you already have plenty of mana on the battlefield, not what he was looking for. Celestian Colonnades on the other side mean that even though he doesn't have creatures in play, technically right now, George Burrow has the biggest attacking force if he wants it.
Yeah, that was kind of a whiff for Elias. Like, his opponent was at 4. There was a lot of combinations where he just kills his opponent right there, but just Avacyn's Pilgrim, that's not good enough. Might be, well, good enough if he has some more threats. We already know he's got the Meddling Mage, but he will need something more.
Sin Collector coming down here. This one a pretty potent one against control. Gets to look at George Burrow's hand, and it turns out that George has the perfect plan against Sin Collector, which is just to only ever draw lands.
No sins for George.
He is beyond reproach, our George. Meddling Mage, Elias Watsfeld now having to consider which spell he wants to stop. I mean, it's the sort of thing that the sequencing there normally, Sin Collector into Meddling Mage is great. You get to remove one card, name a different card that's already in your opponent's hand with a Meddling Mage, and make sure that the ability on Chris Pecula's invitational card is going to be active immediately. As things stand, Watsfeld is going to have to be a little bit more speculative about what might be drawn by Burrow or what might get Burrow back into this game. We don't know, but if there's the likes of maybe Elspeth Sun's Champion or Sphinx's Revelation in George Burrow's deck, one of those high velocity cards that really changes things, that might be a good name there for Elias Watsfeld. It sounds like our main match is kicking off. I think that we're going to give it at least a turn or so just to see whether or not Watsfeld can get these final points of damage in. There is the handshake, another land drawn for George Burrow, so we have not missed anything there. Watsfeld picking up his second game win, and we get to get back to our Death Shadow mirror without any delays whatsoever.
There was still a small chance that Elias wouldn't attack there, so kind of a easy concede there. If he just plays a land, he's got Celestial Colonnade. If he had drawn like a Path to Exile or a Blessed Alliance, he would have won the game, so there was a chance Elias was not attacking there.
Just a Windswept Heath to kick things off for Jasper. Mishra's Bauble from Marcio here.
Double bobble.
It took a long while for Mishra's Bauble to see play, but at the top table's quite a bit now. And Marcio very carefully figuring out exactly how he wants to sequence his early turns. We've seen him sometimes in these Death Shadow mirrors choosing to play his lands tapped and saving his life a little bit. In this instance, it looks like he's doing quite the reverse. He's going to be using that fetch land to immediately find black mana that is then going to cast Thoughtseize. And what have we got to work with here? There's a Street Wraith, Lingering Souls, I think, Tarmogoyf, and then a few lands here for Jasper Grimmer.
I think Tarmogoyf is the easy pick now. Although you never know with Marcio. He might go for Street Raid. I would be very surprised if he goes for Lingering Souls.
I must admit it took me an extra second to figure out that that was Lingering Souls because of the white border. I wanted to just double check in my mind, just from the right hand side of the artwork. It's amazing how one small change to the look of the card can kind of just jump in the way of your little brain processes a little bit. Now, without any immediate threats in hand here, Jasper Grimmer, it's going to take him a bit of time to get things going with this Lingering Souls. There we see the version from Modern Masters with new artwork. Those souls don't look like they're lingering so much as trying to break out of the house that they're in.
They're inhabitants of Hollowhenge.
They were.
They're dead. Right? Another Mishra's Bauble.
And this time Mishra's Bauble on Jasper Grimmer's own deck. That's signaling that he might have a fetch land and wants to move things away or know when he's going to use his Street Wraith. Immediately chooses to draw into that card. Has a Thoughtseize of his own. And we see 2 Inquisition of Kozilek, a Fatal Push, and a Death Shadow. It looks like both of these players recognizing that there aren't that many different threats to deal with in each of these decks, so using the discard judiciously to take down threats where they can.
It's kind of normal in this matchup, I guess, that the early game plays out like this. Discard into discard into discard, and then try to stick one threat that goes all the way.
And I guess that there's no point letting the discard sit in your hand, because as games go later, there are fewer cards to remove. Path to Exile, they're getting hit with Inquisition of Kozilek. Maybe Marcio will hold back a little bit on discard at this point, because Lingering Souls isn't a particularly exciting one to force out of someone's hand.
Well, it's not the best, but it's still something, right? Your opponent gets two tokens less in return, but he doesn't have to spend 3 mana. But he doesn't have anything anyway, so it might have been not that bad this turn around. But instead he goes for a 1/1 Death Shadow, as he's now on 12 life, so 13 minus 12 is 1.
1-1, a great start. I can't imagine that it's going to end there. And the good thing for Marcio here is that all of that discard has meant that he knows that there's not an immediate way for Jasper Grimmer to deal with this Death Shadow. If he can find a way of adjusting his life total down just a little bit, you know, one fetch land will do it, then even this Lingering Souls is not going to be too much of concern for him. Just speed bumps for an ever-growing Death Shadow.
Marcio has an interesting choice here. Does he go for Inquisition of Kozilek, or does he just drop another Death Shadow onto the board? He's got only 2 lands, so searching up a Ranger of Eos with his Traverse the Oval Wall isn't very potent, it's very slow. So I think he's just gonna go for another Death Shadow. He's got only 1 card which he doesn't know about. So he needs things to go right if he wants to hit something with the Inquisition of Kozilek. He's certainly not attacking, it seems, with the Death Shadow, unless he searches up Street Raid. That could actually be a good play. Inquisition of Kozilek plus, get Street Raid, cycle, get it to a 3/3 and start attacking. Yeah, I like that one. Let's see if Marcio likes it as well.
One way or another, there's a lot of different ways to search in this Death Shadow deck, and that's one of the reasons it's so potent. You just get to have such a consistent set of draws. Marcio here working through all the options. You do not want to pick up a second draw on day one, Marcel Carvalho, in these mirror matches.
Marshall's just going for a second Death Shadow, it seems. Maybe even a fetch land. No, second Death Shadow. Marshall likes his threats.
Both players have 1/1s, and Jasper Grimmer's fly.
So Jasper must be favorite, right?
It's the only possible outcome I can think of. Expert analysis here.
4 1/1s with flying against 2 1/1s without flying. Doesn't get easier than that.
Jasper Grimmer's life total descending. He sacrificed his marsh flats and it's just making sure. Finds a temple garden, does want to get green mana. Cannot get it any other way than by fetching an untapped temple garden.
Why would he want green mana?
And he was eyeing up a forest at one point before realizing that's not going to work out.
Yeah, I guess he just wanted the basic land, but he's only got the forest. And now
Tarmogoyf and a flashback Lingering Souls. Lots of creatures on the board here for Jasper Grimmer, and that Tarmogoyf comparatively large. We've got instant sorcery, artifact, land and creature in the graveyard, so a 5/6 at present. Jasper needs to think carefully about how much he wants to attack and when, because basically if he attacks for a medium amount, that makes those Death Shadows gigantic.
Yeah.
If he attacks for a small amount, why is he bothering? And he basically he almost wants to sort of hang back and then find a way of attacking for just lethal, which may be a little bit of a challenge here. Tarmogoyf coming down from Marcio Carvalho. Marcio managing to do just fine in spite of not having found a third land yet.
Well, if all of your spells cost 1 or 2 mana, you don't mind finding only 2 lands. It's actually perfect. Like his only card that is more than 3 mana is Ranger of Eos. I haven't really seen any Planeswalkers either from Marcio.
Yeah, I mean, I guess something's got to give if you're finding space for the likes of Ranger Rios in your deck. Inquisition of Kozilek, a swing and a miss for Marcio Carvalho, but he still has that information to work with. And he has got a Bloodstained Mire now to lower his life total if he wishes. Fatal Push to deal with Tarmogoyf. And here come the swings. Now that he's got that Bloodstained Mire in play, he knows that he can make those Death Shadow so much bigger at a moment's notice. Just a double check on the size of the Tarmogoyf. I believe it's a 5/6 here. Artifact, creature, land, instant, and sorcery. No planeswalkers or similar in Jasper Grimmer's graveyard, and Tarfire has kind of fallen out of favour for a lot of players with this deck. So the tribal card type, not too much of concern.
Yeah, this is a tough spot for Jasper. I guess he could kind of stabilize with a Death Shadow of his own, because his would be bigger than Marcio's. But he needs to find it right now. He's going down to 4/6. Yeah, he needs to find the Death Shadow now.
There's a reason that that's the card that this deck's named after. It's so pivotal to the way that this deck plays out, the way that a lot of the decisions are contextualized for these decks. And the mirror, just one example of how fiddly figuring out Death Shadow math, when to attack, when not to attack, really can be. Windswept Heath finding that unglued forest and traverse the Ilmwald plus, I would presume, a Ranger of Eos here, just kind of shortcutting a little bit. So Ranger of Eos into play, 2 Death Shadow in hand. This is how you stabilize. Has he managed to do it on time though?
Yeah, but 1 removal spell from Marcio now gives him the game.
Yeah, all 3 of Marcio's threats likely to be big enough to end this.
Oh, he draws the only card he cannot play.
Ranger of Eos?
I think so. Oh, but the Death Shadow is only 4-4, so he does not have to block it. He can actually chump and hope that Marcio didn't draw a Street Rate.
Street Wraith, the only instant speed way that Marcio has of lowering his own life total here.
Which I haven't seen after Cyber from Marcio. Not in this match and not in the previous matches we saw from Marcio. I think. There we go. He goes to 1. No more fetching. But it does mean his dead shadows are going to be pretty big.
Yeah, just throw out some 12-12s for 1. Why not?
Yeah. Fling.
Lingering Soul's a great pickup there for Jasper Grimmer. He knew that he was going to need some blockers.
He can even attack with the Ranger of Eos. Put Marcio at 6, have 3 blockers, but then he still dies to a removal spell.
Yeah, it's an interesting
No,
one.
he needs 2 removal spells. Yeah, I think attack with the Ranger, put Marcio at 6, play 4 guys, threaten lethal in 2 turns.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, the difference between... I mean, Death Shadow functionally is infinitely big. He's on 1 life. He's not really need to worry about those Death Shadows getting much bigger. Flicks that Lingering Souls onto the battlefield as he plays the front end of it.
Terminate.
1
turn too late, I think.
Yeah, this one looks like it might be slipping away from us over here. What's the other card in his hand there?
Ranger of Eos.
Ranger of Eos. Lands for Jasper Grimmer. They're not the interesting bit.
As long as he doesn't crack them. Is this risky? 3 blockers? Yeah, no,
well, he knows that
Marcio has to double block. 6. So his are 7/7. Well, he can actually double block 1, right? And kill the other one with Terminate. Yeah. So double block 1. With my 2 7/7s, I block your 12/12. And then terminate the other Dead Shadow. Then he might have a shot again.
interesting stuff. Jasper Grimmer wants to be able to close the door on this game, and it may be that his eagerness to get stuck into the red zone pays. Marcio here. Marcio able to use Terminate to deal with 1 Death Shadow. I'm just double checking the sizes of these 2 7/7 Death Shadows versus 2 7/7s versus a 12/12. Marcio drops to 4. Flashback Lingering Soul. So present 4 power in the air.
Yeah, but Jasper has to double block here. Because he's at 1 life. Yeah, he might have thrown it away there.
Is it a removal spell?
It's not. So attack. He will have 3 creatures left. So Jasper will have to draw something once again.
But if you attack here with both creatures and the blocks are 2 spirits, then Ranger of Eos is lethal on the swing back. So it's...
But if you don't attack, then the spirits are lethal. So you have to go for it. Yeah.
He's representing removal or having nothing better here. I think it's unlikely that he's going to sway Jasper Grimmer from attacking. And that is enough to square things up. 16 minutes left on the clock. These players go to their sideboard, and they are going to have to find a way of winning game 3. Marcio Carvalho's already had 1 draw in a Death Shadow mirror, and you could see him there sort of trying to explain the complexities of that to his opponent. Like, he's having to work for every win here, Marcio Carvalho. 6-0-1 so far. Abzan Death Shadow in the hands of Jasper Grimmer, a full 7-0. We said at the start of this tournament that Death Shadow was going to be an important player, and you know what? Turns out we had that one on lock.
Yep. At least one thing we get right.
Well, we've had some great games already from Marcio with Death Shadow. I'm actually really excited to see more from him. Our feature match area, no doubt thinning out a little bit as we get closer to the end of this round. but Elliot Bousseau and Sergei Kleminov still going, and Bousseau, another player on blue-white control. He's got detention spheres to work with though, and that kind of an interesting one, potentially able to deal with multiple threats, and that kind of card advantage, a nice one. For those of you that are doing land spotting, he's the one working with White Cliffs of Dover Eurolands amongst others there, so style points there. These players also have picked up a draw already in this tournament though. As much as we've seen some games end very, very quickly, as it turns out, that not a given in this modern format.
Gavany Township with enough mana to activate. It's a lot of damage there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 damage if Elliot doesn't block. He could put into play a second Snapcaster Mage just to double block, for example, the Noble Hierarch, but I don't think that's gonna be worth it.
I do love seeing a Noble Hierarch getting stuck in, and in this case getting stuck in for one without the need for any help from Exalted.
He is going for it, seems.
Can't quite see what the other card in his graveyard is there. It may be that that's not so relevant as simply being an ambusher for Thalia's Lieutenant. Gavany Township providing food to all the humans that are attacking here. And a big trade between a couple of Snapcaster Mages and Thalia's Lieutenant. Thalia herself, currently a 4-power first striker, and that enough to make her a prime target for Detention Sphere. That Detention Sphere costing 4 because Thalia, of course, making non-creature spells cost a little bit extra. Rousseau on 7 though, and this Noble Hierarch, if it wants to, immediately getting in for 3, and with Gavany Township that could become 4.
Yeah, but I think Sergei wants to play a Tireless Tracker here.
I mean, I guess that it's going to be a 2-turn clock either way, so it's safer to do it this way and get more threats on the board.
Is that negate from Elliot?
I think he's got Cryptic Command and Dispel in hand.
Dispel.
Not the mana for Cryptic Command just yet, though it does have the potential to buy him a bit of time. A land here generating a clue for Sergei Kleminov, sorry. Sees another Cryptic Command from that Serum Visions. And picked up a Spreading Seas, which he may well want to throw on that Gavany Township. It's already done good work, but so we're hearing that the other match is just kicking off. We're going to take just a little moment more to see whether or not Sergei can close this game out before we jump back to see our game 3 between Jasper Grimmer and Marcel Cavallo. Give these slightly different decks a little moment to shine on camera. Elliot Bousseau on 2 though, it might be a very short moment at this point. Collected Company the pickup for Kleminov, though there is enough mana that Bousseau representing a Cryptic Command, which he does indeed have in hand. Sin Collector, a great draw though. Is there enough mana to cast Sin Collector and a Collected Company this turn? It looks like there is.
Yep. Let's see if he goes for the Sin Collector before the attacks. I think I just attack first, because you're running it. Cryptic Command is gonna counter it and then still tap all of your creatures. But if you wait till you attack, then Elliot has to do something. He will tap your creatures and then you get to resolve the Sin Collector.
It's an interesting decision point that he's placed with here.
Yeah. There we go, Cryptic Command. Draw my second Cryptic Command, which I left on top, and now he can grab it with Sin Collector.
Nice hits there. And knowing what he knows, still past the turn, and there's the handshake. Elliot Bousseau succumbing to 4-color humans, and we get a chance to jump back and see a little bit more Death Shadow.
Yeah!
I like it. If you're going to watch someone playing Death Shadow, Marcio Carvalho, I think, has been playing very, very well with this deck. Even though we've yet to see him actually win a match on Kanemaru, that he got a draw the last time he played. And this time round, there's 10 minutes left on the clock, and he's still trucking on through. We see offer Thoughtseize, Liliana of the Veil. That's not one we've seen from him too much thus far. Lingering Souls and a Traverse the Elvenwald in hand alongside land. Guessing that Liliana's going to go here.
Or Elvenwald.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, I guess Traverse does represent a creature at some point.
Yeah, Liliana took it.
Jasper already on 13 life after the now familiar combination of Fetch Land, Shock Land, Street Wraith, Thoughtseize turn 1. Taylor's oldest time. Thoughtseize from Marcio here. Gets to see Ranger of Eos, Abrupt Decay, Death Shadow, and a couple of lands in varying states of border color.
Yeah, he's not taking the Death Shadow. It's between Ranger of Eos and Death Shadow, and it all depends whether or not he thinks he can raise the turn 4 Ranger of Eos, but I don't think he can with his hand, so might have to take that one. No, he's going for Death Shadow. Maybe hoping to draw a second copy of Thoughtseize, or still raise it anyway, but he's still at 17, so his own Death Shadow, 1, he does not have one, and 2, won't be big. Although it's still quite some turns till the Ranger of Eos actually does something.
And at some point, these players are going to have to consider the clock on their match as well. 8 minutes left at this point. You can see Jasper Grimmer there. He's got a pocket watch on the table, so he's very aware of the amount of time left in this game.
Grabs a Blood Grip. No, he doesn't. Stomping Ground. Feels like he needs another green source. He still needs like one extra card type for his Elvenwald to search up something. Yeah, Mishra's Bauble will of course do it.
Mishra's Bauble playing good work in this deck. It's not just about saying it's a 56 card deck rather than a 60 card deck. Getting the artifact in the graveyard, a relevant piece of the puzzle. And here's the first Lingering Souls of our deciding game, generating a couple of spirits for Marcio this time.
Go ahead, fetch first so I can look at your top card. Yeah, this gives Marcio a little bit more information, because now he gets to sacrifice the bauble. But I think Jasper would have gone for end of turns fetch anyway. Draws Marsh Flats for Marcio. What did Jasper draw? 3-3. Here we go again.
Spin the wheel. Finds a Mishra's Bauble. Keep on digging.
Keeps it on top. Still trying to get to 4 mana for Ranger of Eos there.
So Jasper Grimmer, if he does draw into Death Shadow, his are going to be a little bit larger here. Life total is always a concern in this matchup.
And this turn is going to be quite good for Marcio. He can fetch, go down to 9, grab a Death Shadow with his Traverse, and flashback Lingering Soul. So he's putting up a lot of pressure right there. So he might actually be able to raise the Ranger of Eos despite having quite a slow draw. I guess that speaks for how much damage Jasper did to himself already.
Yeah, it's one of the big decision points, and I think that it's very draw dependent by the looks of things, how to navigate that damage that you deal to yourself in this matchup. It may also, in this case, be motivated by recognizing there's 5 minutes left on the clock, and some game plans are just less viable for winning a game that's got to end fast if you don't want to draw.
I wonder whether Marshall should or should not go for the traverse, actually, because he knows about... yeah, he's going for it, but he's not going to play it. He's going to get a Ranger of Eos of his own, because he knows about the Abrupt Decay in Jasper's hand. Yeah, again, well played by Marshall. Like, end of turn, Abrupt Decay, 1 token he doesn't really care about. He just makes 4 new ones next turn. And this gives him Ranger of Eos insurance for the late game. Now he's going for Tarmogoyf. A bit surprised by that one.
So Marcio with the threats on the board here, and because his threats are flying ones, in some respects he can probably get by a Death Shadow now if it does work out that that's where Jasper Grimm is going. Representing a 2-turn clock in the air.
Did Jasper Grimmer cyborg a Orzhov Pontiff?
Orzhov Pontiff is a hot one that I know has been looked at by some of the Abzan Collected Company decks that are running the Vizier of Remedies combo. I'm not sure that it's going to make it into Abzan Death Shadow all too often. I'd be interested in something like Zealous Persecution, maybe.
Yeah, but that one you cannot find with Traverse.
A fair point.
I would rather have the Pontiff. It's also good when you attack with Tarmogoyfs and your opponent blocks with Tarmogoyf, then you can kill them. But I would be very surprised to see Orzhov Pontiff here. Ah, Boyuka Bog.
Interesting stuff. So lots of copies of Lingering Souls currently in Marcio Carvalho's graveyard. Not anymore. That a really interesting sideboard choice, I would imagine. I can't think that it would be in his main deck, but you never know. Death Shadow in play, currently a 6/6. Now Marcio has a little bit of a think about how much to attack with. If he attacks with all 4 and Jasper has a way of lowering his life total, that would be big enough to attack for 11 on the swing back.
Attack for 4, put Jasper at 3, so Death Shadow is
a 10/10.
10/10.
It's a risky play. I mean, I guess it all depends on how much removal Marcio has in hand to work with, and you can see he's shaking his head, checking out everything that's been removed, trying to think about what's left in his deck here. This is not a straightforward set of calculations.
Yeah, this is such a difficult matchup, especially the mirror match is so hard.
And the fact that at this point he recognizes that Jasper Grimmer must be working off a slightly different hymn sheet to most of the Death Shadow lists only makes his life even more difficult, because he needs to at least give passing thoughts to what other cards might have swayed Jasper Grimmer to go in this Abzan direction rather than Jund.
The good thing about attacking with 3 is that you still have 4 on the next turn, but that does mean you have to chump block with the Tarmogoyf. Well, actually, attacking with 3, put your opponent at 4, so then it's only a 9/9. Yeah, then a Street Trade is still lethal. Yeah, this is tough once again.
Also, 1 minute left on the clock. In this instance, I think that it's less likely the game's going to end in a draw, though there's a weird moment at some point with this matchup where if you decide that you don't want to lose, you can present a loss of blockers. It's just that at that point, actually winning becomes tricky.
Seems like he... this is tough. If he attacks with everything, his opponent needs a removal spell plus a way to lower his life. If he doesn't attack with anything, then his opponent kinda only needs a removal spell to survive the turn. And he knows Jasper has the... I actually knew already about the Abrupt Decay. So now Jasper needs another removal spell and a way to lower his life in the same turn. But I'm afraid that if he just attacks...
Well, 3, 2, 1. This is the end of regular time. There's going to be 5 turns after this.
Marshall could chum block here. Doesn't really matter which one he blocks with, because there's the abrupt decay. Right, always. Tarmogoyf. Oh, he's actually just taking it? Oh.
Interesting.
So now Traverse will search up a second Dead Shadow. And Abrupt Decay gets rid of a spirit. So this means Marshall has outs in the form of removal spells.
Could not get any closer than this. That die on the top of the screen is that we're now
Fatal
in turn
push.
1 of extra turns.
He played it so well again. I mean, look at that. Attacking with 3 creatures, so your opponent is only at 4, so you don't die to street rate, and now attack him for lethal. Wow. Wonderfully played.
Great stuff from Marcio Carvalho. Jasper Grimmer picking up his first loss of the tournament, advancing to 7-1 now. With 1 round to go, Marcio Carvalho 7-0-1. He's the kind of unfortunate undefeated, which is to say, not the perfect record, but at 7-0-1 going into the last round, we know he's going to be playing tomorrow, and we know he's going to be playing on a fairly high table too, even if he picks up a loss in this last round. That was the last game in our feature match area. Understandably, I'm sure you can believe, as they did go to time. So we will be back with round 8 soon for you. But for now, these messages.